Grandma, you will look like this soon.
My 4-year-old granddaughter drew a portrait of me. But, suddenly, she started coloring over my face with a red crayon.
Oh, Grandpa says you need to run away now.
Other people wouldn't understand the words that my granddaughter just said. Because my husband passed away 6 months ago. But I knew that my granddaughter had a mysterious power. And upon seeing her like that, someone started to tremble. Life is unpredictable. My husband Ronald suddenly passed away in a traffic accident when he was 61 years old. After retiring, we had planned to enjoy traveling together. However, losing my husband, whom I had been together with since high school and throughout our lives, was a profound sorrow. Thanks to the inheritance Ronald left to me, I didn't have financial worries, but the loneliness only grew stronger. What saved me was living about a 30-minute drive away from my son, his wife, and my 4-year-old granddaughter, Grace. Wendy, my daughter-in-law, is 5 years older than my son, Alan. She lost her parents when she was younger, so she has cherished us like her own parents. She is kind and reliable, and she's been more than a suitable wife for my son, who often gets into trouble. Actually, Alan had started his own business with a loan from my husband. Fortunately, the company was doing well, which gave us peace of mind.
It seems Alan has settled down with a family now, so we can finally relax.
Yes, really. Thanks to Wendy, we also have an adorable grandchild. My husband, who used to talk with me like that, is no longer here. Even as time passed, I found it difficult to accept his death. Perhaps concerned about me, my daughter-in-law started bringing my granddaughter over more often. Thanks to her, the sadness of losing my husband gradually began to fade away. My son rarely visited us at home, citing his busy work schedule, which was understandable. Alan became delinquent during puberty that made us worry a lot, but now he's working diligently and seems to be taking care of his family, which brings me comfort. Thank you, Wendy. It's all thanks to you that our boy is doing so well.
Oh. No, It's not like that.
When I expressed my gratitude to my daughter-in-law, she wore a complex expression on her face. And she avoided eye contact with me, looking down with a thoughtful demeanor. You seem a bit down. Is something bothering you?
Oh, it's nothing. It's not a big deal.
Seeing Wendy giving an evasive answer, I briefly wondered if she and my son had had an argument. However, when Wendy wasn't around, my granddaughter said something that caught my attention.
Mommy doesn't have any money. Grandma, can you buy me a toy? Grandpa is worried too.
What? Okay, I'll get you one later. I was puzzled by Grace's roundabout way of asking for something. And bringing up my deceased husband didn't seem like something a 4-year-old would come up with on her own. I wonder if Wendy is prompting her to say this? I felt uneasy about it, but I kept my mouth shut because I couldn't bring myself to ask Wendy about it. Indeed, life is full of worries and challenges that never seem to end. It's been nearly a year since my husband's accident, yet the driver who hit him still hasn't been caught. On that day, my husband was walking our beloved dog Terry, and it happened in a narrow alley with good visibility. According to the police, there were no skid marks from the car. I had been living day by day, hoping they would catch the hit-and-run driver soon, for his sake as well. One day, as usual, Wendy and Grace came to my house. When I was watching my granddaughter play with her toys, my daughter-in-law said something unexpected.
Lately, Grace has been acting strangely.
Oh. In what way? According to Wendy, Grace was laughing by herself, so she asked her what was going on.
I'm playing with Grandpa.
She said that. It was thought that my granddaughter, being close to her grandfather, was experiencing a psychological shock from his loss. However, she said something that surprised me as well.
Grandma, did you take blood pressure medicine in the morning? You mustn't forget.
Huh? I was taken aback. Because that was something my late husband used to say. I have high blood pressure and take medication every morning. But I often forget, so my husband always reminded me. But it was something only he and I knew about.
I thought so.
She nodded. Be careful not to get burned, Wendy. It seems she was also surprised when Grace suddenly said to her. It turns out that those were the words my husband used to quietly remind Wendy, who had burned herself while cooking before. My daughter-in-law and I started believing that our granddaughter could really see my husband. Thank you. You still worry about your family. I want to see you soon. I spoke to my husband's portrait and wiped away tears. I thought that if Grace could talk to my late husband, she might know information about the person who hit him with the car, but she didn't say anything about that. Amidst all this, my son visited me for the first time in a while, with his wife and daughter. Our beloved dog Terry always wagged his tail happily when he saw my granddaughter Grace, but for some reason, on that day, he barked at my son's family. I hurriedly took Terry outside, petting his head to calm him down, but I couldn't shake off the feeling of unease. Who was he barking at? However, my granddaughter's sweet voice quickly dispelled such thoughts from my mind.
Today, Grace will make delicious pancakes for Grandma.
Oh, thank you. That sounds wonderful. When I was watching a heartwarming scene in which Wendy and Grace were making pancakes together in the kitchen, my son talked to me.
Mom, I need to talk to you about something.
Huh? My son said he had a matter to discuss that he didn't want his wife to hear, and he led me to a room in the back. What Alan told me was shocking. It turns out that when my husband passed away, we divided his savings of about $1 million equally between me and my son. However, Alan said that his wife had spent all of it. $500,000 in just 1 year?
Yeah, that's right. It's unbelievable.
Apparently, she used the savings to help her guardians, her aunt and uncle, who were facing bankruptcy.
Wendy pretends to be a good wife, but she has a greedy side when it comes to money.
Alan says he was constantly questioned by her, asking if he didn't want to help her relatives. That kind, Wendy?
Yeah. It really got to me. She said, it's just a matter of time before I, the only son, inherit the property of this house. I can't wait for that day. She's two-faced, isn't she?
I couldn't believe it. But then I recalled that strange look on my daughter-in-law's face the other day. I had thought of Wendy as my own daughter, but it made me sad to hear that she was after money. How awful.
Right? Mom, you believe in Wendy, so I thought I should tell you the truth. I'm sorry for giving you a tough time.
My son cared about my feelings, but he asked me to keep this to myself because his wife would get angry if she found out. I felt unsettled, but because of my granddaughter, I didn't want to make a big deal out of it. Alan said they were short on living expenses due to his wife's spending, so I gave him $1,000 from my mattress savings, but he looked disappointed when he saw it.
Mom, this isn't enough.
Indeed, it might not be enough for a family of 3 to live on. All right, I'll withdraw more from my bank account and give it to you later.
Got it. I feel bad for making you worry. I'll pay you back later. Anyway, Wendy really gets on your nerves, doesn't she?
When I nodded in agreement with my son's words, I heard my granddaughter calling out to me.
Grandma, the pancakes are ready.
I stopped talking with my son. Okay, I'm coming right now. I responded to her.
I guess I have no choice but to do it.
I felt like I heard my son muttering this behind me. I wondered what he meant by that, but my granddaughter came to me, so I couldn't ask my son about it. An hour later, after enjoying delicious pancakes, another surprising thing happened that caught me off guard. My granddaughter took out crayons and a drawing pad from the drawer and drew a portrait of me. Her drawing depicted me with big eyes and long eyelashes, looking like a princess. It made me smile involuntarily. Wow, you drew me so beautifully. Grace smiled at me, and then picked up a red crayon. And in the next moment, she pressed the red crayon against my portrait and vigorously colored it all in red. In the picture, I looked as though I had been covered in blood.
Stop it.
Wendy quickly grabbed Grace's hand, but she looked bewildered.
But Grandpa said Grandma will look like this soon.
I was left speechless by the words of my granddaughter who had a mystery power. Then, after staring into empty space for a while, Grace suddenly turned serious and ran towards me.
Grandma, run away from here. It's dangerous.
She earnestly pleaded with me. I don't understand. What does she mean? Who is she telling me to run away from? And upon hearing her words, someone started to tremble. It was Wendy. She had a pale face, and even though it wasn't hot, she was sweating on her forehead. Are you trying to kill me?
No, no way. It's just that Grace's words were scary. You and I get along well, right?
She said with a smile, but her eyes did not reflect the smile. What is the truth? I was completely confused, but the one I trusted the most was Grace. As I pondered everything, my granddaughter quietly whispered into my ear.
Grandpa says you should tell Mom clearly.
Okay. I understand, Grace. Even though I said that, the atmosphere became awkward that day, so I asked my son's family to leave. After I calmed myself down, I took out my phone and made a call to someone. 3 days later, I got a call from Alan.
About the money we talked about the other day.
I know. Come over. I withdrew it from the bank as promised.
Thank you. I'll come over soon.
My son must have been quite desperate for money, so he came to our house later that day.
Wendy kept asking me for more money again, and she took all the money I had. That's why I need more.
I thought so, so I've prepared something important.
Huh? Like, maybe property deeds or something? Are you talking about passing on the entire inheritance to me as the heir? Mom, you're really understanding. Alright, show me that important thing.
My son eagerly urged with sparkling eyes and a beaming smile, looking delighted. So I showed what I had prepared to Alan. Here you go. It was a bottle containing bright red powder and red wine. Upon seeing it, he, whose face changed the color and eyes widened, exclaimed,
Why is it here?
I actually knew that Wendy wasn't a bad person like my son had said. After all, she had treated both my husband and me with genuine kindness. So I secretly called her out and persuaded her. I think of you as my own daughter. I know you're going through something, so I want you to tell me everything. Then she started telling me the shocking truth in tears. Upon hearing that, I decided to investigate my son with my daughter-in-law. The red powder and wine were found by my daughter-in-law while she was searching their home, and they were hidden in Alan's bag in the back of the closet. Inside the bag, there was also a book about poisonous plants and printed pages from the internet detailing what happens if they are ingested. Additionally, there was a note detailing a plan to take my life. Alan had intended to mix the red powder into the wine and make me drink it. It said you'd vomit blood and suffer if you drink it. If I had drunk it, I would have been just as my granddaughter had drawn. On that day, Wendy started shaking when she heard Grace's words because she realized that Alan was targeting my life. I glared sharply at my son. You were trying to kill me for money, weren't you?
Huh? Do you really think I would do something like that to Mom? I don't know anything about that powder or wine. Wendy must have been the one who prepared them.
What? So are you saying Wendy's responsible for all of this?
That's right. She was trying to set me up. It's all that woman's doing.
At that moment, the door of the next room slammed open forcefully. The person who appeared there was trembling with anger, fists clenched tightly.
You liar. How dare you say such a thing?
Wendy, why are you here?
Your mother believes me. I told her everything.
To expose my son's lies, I had asked my daughter-in-law to hide in the next room. According to Wendy, my son's company was suffering from poor management, operating on a shoestring every month. Debt collectors were not only coming to the company but also their house, and my son and his wife were struggling to cover living expenses. They had no extra money for things like Grace's toys. During that time, my husband passed away. It seems my daughter-in-law witnessed Alan's smirk upon receiving the news. It seems that with the inheritance, he managed to repay his debts. However, Wendy had a sense of unease about Alan continuing to borrow money repeatedly to sustain his business afterward. This troubled her deeply. All the stories my son told about using money for his wife's foster parents were lies. Her aunt and uncle lived modestly and peacefully, with no debt whatsoever. Furthermore, Wendy investigated his computer. She mentioned his carelessness in not having a password, which made it easy for her to access its contents. From there, Wendy found Alan's plans written in a diary style. It revealed that my son intended to kill me and monopolize the inheritance for himself. In addition, it was discovered that Alan had also been responsible for my husband's death. With this much evidence, there's no way you can escape.
Well,
Realizing he couldn't escape, my son turned pale and started trembling uncontrollably. Then he began making excuses to try to justify himself.
but when I asked Dad for help because the company was going under, he told me I should just give up.
So,
Isn't that terrible? A parent who won't help their own son isn't a real parent.
according to the plan in the document, Alan knew Ronald and Terry's walking route and ambushed my husband, running him over with a car. When my son's family came to our house, the one who our beloved dog Terry barked at was Alan, who had taken my husband's life. Such a terrible thing to do.
I didn't want to do it either, but it was the only way to get money in exchange for Dad's life. Mom, You'll help me, won't you?
After targeting my life, Alan suddenly changed his attitude and begged me for help. Thinking of my husband's feelings, I felt a burning heat surge through my entire body, and a rage unlike anything I had ever experienced before welled up within me. Ronald didn't abandon his son, but surely, he must have wanted Alan to start anew for the sake of his wife and children. Someone who tramples on their father's feelings like you isn't my child. I'll never forgive you.
But please, help me.
I recorded this conversation too, so now I have all the evidence. You just need to talk to the police. After I delivered my cutting remark, my son seemed to realize that saying anything more would be futile. He collapsed to his knees right there on the spot. Afterward, my son and his wife divorced. Alan was arrested and sentenced to live behind bars for many years. I adopted Wendy, and she became my daughter. Now, we live happily together with Grace and our beloved dog Terry. It's the rainy season. I could hear the raindrops tapping on the leaves in the garden. At that moment, my grandchild whispered to me again.
Grandpa says meeting Grandma is still a long way off.
Until the day I can meet my husband again, I will continue to live happily and true to myself.